radio. What's going on with that radio?
This video is an explainer for the previous time store theory video, which I get may be hard to follow or accept, with a lot of things not explained in detail, but this needed to be in two parts, one so I could try to let people see it visually as a playthrough, and this one for a more evidence-based explanation. The basic summary of that video is that Silent Hill 1 is a never-ending time loop, in which the ending is actually the beginning, which goes on to the ending which is actually the beginning, and that the fire 7 years ago happens at the end of the game, and the cause being connected with a boiler explosion. 7 years ago a baby is found by Harry and his wife, and with no children of their own, they adopt the child and name her Cheryl. Harry's wife dies a few years later, and when Cheryl turns 7, they return to Silent Hill. Harry goes through the game, and stops the bad guys and leaves with the new baby at the end, which then leads on to Silent Hill 3. Game over. This is the understanding of most players, and there is no problem with that, it can work just fine. But at a deeper level, I think there is more going on than anyone's noticed. Who left Cheryl in the first place is not explained, nor how the fire started, which other games have attempted to answer.
Not fire. It's smoke. My God.
But was never needed. The answers are already in the first game, hidden in plain sight. They just need placing in the right order. Kiichiro Toyama is the director of Silent Hill 1. Toyama's work is pretty complex, with the story itself being a puzzle we have to try to piece together. There is a lot of evidence to support this theory, and that it was Toyama's intent with the plot. If you're familiar with his work, you will know there is usually more going on than just what you can pick up from one playthrough at the surface level. Meaning multiple playthroughs are fully intended. If there is more evidence to support the complex answer over the simple answer, then the complex answer is far more likely to have more merit. So the basic idea for time store theory is, while a fire burns in a nearby town, Harry and his wife find a baby left on the side of the road. They raise her and name her Cheryl. His wife later dies. Then 7 years later Harry goes to Silent Hill. Harry goes through the game. Dahlia takes Alessa home, which can't be possible because it burned down 7 years prior. The fire boiler explosion happens at the end, 7 years ago, and Harry takes the baby given by Super Alessa, and leaves the baby on the side of the road for next Harry and his wife to find her. So then, new Harry takes the baby left by the previous Harry and raises her, and eventually goes back to Silent Hill, and the cycle repeats endlessly. Or more specifically for all the endings and replaythroughs until you reach a specific ending which breaks this causal time loop. So there's always a Harry that leaves the baby, and one that always finds it. The Harry that leaves the baby at the end of each playthrough we could call anything, but for the purpose of this video we will refer to him as Ghost Harry. And the Harry who is actively on a playthrough of the game we will refer to as Current Harry. Current Harry goes through the game, and upon delivering the baby, becomes Ghost Harry. The new Harry then repeats the cycle, becoming the ghost at the end and so on.
Any idea what it means?
Must be on drugs.
2 Harrys in a time loop. This is too wacky to be true. To figure out how this is going on, we need to ask 2 questions. What actually caused the fire? And when is it happening? The Clock Tower school puzzle involves clues being left for Harry to change time. Time being changed, Harry is directed to the school basement by bloody writing, with the 5 o'clock memo. The 5 o'clock memo is important. It talks about Time's Door and the Hungry Beast. Players can figure out this memo is referring to the basement boiler, but what does a basement boiler have to do with a hungry beast? Players turn on the boiler, and it responds with a loud monster sound. Harry returns here in the dream and turns valves to enter. This is already a warning sign that the boiler is being messed with. We then see an effigy of burning Alessa and the monster. In this case, it takes the form of the lizard from Harry's childhood book. We kill it and return to reality, only to find ourselves back in the boiler room, and it's turned off. So what's going on? What was the point of showing all this? Why is the game trying to link Alessa's burning to a basement boiler? The place we fight the monster looks suspiciously like the end location. At the amusement park, Dahlia says let's go home, but that's not possible since it burned down 7 years ago. And the scene with them all mirrors the home scene with her, Alessa and Harry, same exact positions. I also want to bring to your attention this blue light here. Nowhere consists of multiple areas from the game, and from different times. Even Dahlia's antique shop is missing the hole in the wall we saw. Meaning, it's from a time before that hole was made. More evidence to support this, the videotape does not work in the busted hospital VCR player. Yet when in Nowhere, the exact same VCR player works.
What is it? Still has an unusually high fever.
Meaning this one is from a period of time before it stopped working.
You were too late.
Now might be a good time to point out that Dahlia has been living in her antique shop. She is known as the woman who has been crazy since her kid died 7 years ago.
Oh yeah, that crazy Gillespie lady. But I heard her kid died in a fire and supposedly she's been crazy ever since.
If her house still existed, she could just use her hidden church there, right? But since it's burned to the ground and destroyed she can't, so she builds another in her shop. It's pretty evident that we have gone backwards in time, otherwise we couldn't be in the Gillespie home. Other places including the shopping mall, school, hospital, home, all also appear and are connected via time. The clock here accepts the time tablet. It chimes exactly 5 times. Then explodes in Harry's face. The 5 o'clock meaning is the school boiler memo about the basement boiler. Why would they make such a point of this? In the home, we see the past, which really is actually happening now. The present and past have converged together and are one. We are in all of the basements of the game. Visually it looks like the dream school boiler basement, but the reality is we are in the basement of the Gillespie home, 7 years ago. The monster inside Alessa is drawn out, and once defeated the boiler explodes. Have you ever felt when you are so stressed that you just end up reaching boiling point and end up exploding? The fire noise is used while Incubus screams. And right after the fight, the fire is even visually shown here in the basement. If the boiler was not involved in this explosion, then why the 5 o'clock chime in Nowhere? Bringing up the school boiler memo. This is not just random stuff thrown in. They could have chosen any time for it to land on, but make a point of it being 5 o'clock, then it explodes in Harry's face. Not to mention the sound Harry hears from the basement. And So if it's the boiler explosion, then it's the fire from the article 7 years ago, meaning it's one and the same. The ending fire is the boiler explosion. It's the same boiler explosion which caused the fire when Cheryl was first found by Harry 7 years ago. With the siren itself being the singularity point of the fire, Alessa being consumed, and when Harry drops the baby off for new Harry to find. The siren is the last thing Alessa hears, before falling into her nightmare forever. Would Toyama really write such a convoluted plot involving time loops? And multiple versions of the same character, where the end is the same as the beginning? Toyama's very next game, that he directed, is ironically called Forbidden Siren, and has an almost identical plot to Silent Hill 1, with many considering it to be a spiritual successor to Silent Hill. Siren tells the story of Miyako Kajiro, who is said to be sacrificed by a cult to summon the god of the village. A siren occurs alongside an earthquake, and the events of the game play out.
Oh! An earthquake!
Only to find out that these exact events happened before, in 1976, in which everyone vanished.
Mommy!
Time overlaps, but ultimately the ending is the same as 1976. Here Toyama is repeating the same plot points in yet another time loop.
And the beginning and the end are one. That is the eternal circle of life.
In Forbidden Siren 2, a similar loop occurs with one of the main characters as a child in 1976 directly meeting their future self in 2005, which you later experience from his adult version's viewpoint too. The most clear to understand version of this would be Toyama's third Siren game, Siren, New Translation, which acts as a kind of retelling of the first game.
I know Mommy's scary, but don't cry, honey.
And why are you still wearing those glasses I gave you? Who keeps presents from their ex-wife? God, get rid of them already!
Hey! Cut it out!
Hey!
These are the only
What's wrong with
glasses
you
that
two?
I've got!
We just saw a goddamn murder and you're bickering over stupid shit!
In the game, Amanda was cursed with eternal life for eating the flesh of a fallen skyfish.
Can you walk? It's dangerous by yourself. Let me take
I'm
you somewhere
fine.
safe.
By the end, a young girl called Bella who is hungry, ends up eating the defeated final boss. Who is none other than, well, you get the idea. Her father ends up also going back in time, and is responsible for putting things in place so she can always exist, to save her. Attempts to make the plot clearer and more simplified. In this, the time loop is outright stated by a character.
Everything must be repeated, so that Bella can exist forever. Wait! This looks like
It
Bella's.
means she's alive!
The Iraqbari Church.
You know where this is?
Yes, it looks just like the church built in Colorado. It's just down the road. That way. I have a few things I must take care of.
Let's go.
Okay.
Thanks for all your help. We'll make it through this. Don't give up hope.
기보가.
In response to the interpretation pointed out by some that it is a hint of Silent Hill, or put in as a test from a game of the ultimate difficulty, Mr. Toyamas simply gave a silent, mysterious smile. 3 consecutive Siren games, all with causal time loops. It's highly likely given the evidence in Silent Hill 1, and the fact Toyama repeats his plot points and themes he has in his other works, that the time loop is also in Silent Hill 1. There is more chance of it being true than not. Since we can conclude the boiler explosion does happen at the end of the beginning of the end of the game, we can then come to the logical conclusion that the only person capable of leaving the baby for Harry and his wife to find is Harry. The previous Harry. He is the only person who leaves nowhere with a baby. It could only be him. Because the fire begins in nowhere, it spreads over multiple areas of the town. Note the memo about the fire not being able to be located was in the business district, houses torn down. Could it be multiple fire locations? Nobody really seems to know what's going on or what happened. This fits in with the time loop, and is the same thoughts of people in the Siren Village earthquake in 1976. Nobody seems to fully know what happened, or how it happened. This is how time loops are affecting things. So since Harry delivers the baby, where does he go after? 2 Harrys can't exist. There is only one place a non-existent person can go. This leaves us with 2 questions. What is going on with this ghost Harry business? And who is the phantom person with bloody hands helping Harry each playthrough? It could be the same person. We need to understand that the player themselves is a kind of character in the game. We are an unseen force guiding and controlling Harry. There will be a video on this idea of the player being a character force in the games. When you start a new game, for the first time, on first playthrough Harry will die in this alley. It's unavoidable. This only happens once on your very first new game playthrough, never again. After this scene and on New Fear replay, Harry wakes directly in the diner, bypassing the intro section. This is not to skip a boring intro segment or tutorial, it's a fun section, but they make a point of skipping it. So it's clearly intentional, and important to the plot, and intended to be first playthrough only. It has meaning. This is your first playthrough, and current Harry's first playthrough. You and Harry are both learning the game together. During the first playthrough the players learn how the game works, what to do, where to go, where the keys are, and so on. Seemingly guided by bloody clues left behind by someone or something. On your next playthrough, you now know where everything is, and so does Harry, because he just experienced the whole game, as you did. So on your next playthrough as you're helping current Harry through the game, the previous ghost Harry is doing the same, and is responsible for leaving the clues. Keys, map markers. As he knows where the keys are. If you know where the keys are without checking a map, and in fact could draw the rough locations on a map, then by the same logic, Ghost Harry would know where they are too, and would be able to leave detailed clues to help current Harry find them. Think about it. It's the bloody notes that guide Harry to the school basement boiler. It's not Alessa. She is startled by Harry and runs away from him, even attacking him. It's not Dahlia, because Harry doesn't even have the fluoros, and she has no power, and also she wouldn't direct him into the school when she is at the church. It's not the god or the incubus, because this thing doesn't have an opinion. The bloody hands are from somebody who has been down this path before. They leave weapons for him, guide him to clues to enter the dream world, even leaving books he read as a child, a thing only Harry could know. Even leaving things down drains, forcing Harry to turn valves. Even Cheryl's drawing book has a clue about who is leaving the messages. Usually messages written in the Silent Hill games are in pen or pencil, and are usually from a place in time, or something pretty normal. Messages written in blood are a strong indication that the person writing them is dead, or there is something paranormal going on. This is a plot point used in every other Silent Hill after this one, most notably in Silent Hill 4, with Joseph.
Let me tell you something about him. Fine. him. His true location. It must be nearby.
It's in all the other Silent Hill games, why not the first game? Ghost Harry probably cannot just outright tell the current Harry that it's him leaving the messages. Sometimes for people to reach the conclusion, you have to show them instead of tell. Also, the risk of explaining it might affect the time loop negatively. As far as the cryptic messages go, remember that Harry is a writer, a novel writer to be specific. A ghostwriter. Speaking of writing, isn't it ironic that the voice director who worked closely writing Silent Hill 1 with Toyama, called Harry Inaba, is guiding Michael Gwen, who voiced Harry. A man called Harry, guiding a man that plays Harry.
How were you directed in your recording sessions? How long did the process take?
I don't think I ever worked with Konami without Harry Inaba directing. He was pretty much their hot director at that time. He was one of the coolest, nicest people I met in the entire 10+ years I was in the voice-over industry in Tokyo. I teased him because the lead character I was going to play was also named Harry. He swore that he didn't choose that. He probably met the client and they liked his name, but I don't know if they used it because his name was Harry or not.
This means Toyama himself intentionally chose the main character's name to be Harry.
Thessaly Lerner said that the voice director on Silent Hill was the same guy who was the lead character, and that he had to do the voice because the guy who was supposed to be that character got another voiceover job that paid better for that day. Can you confirm any of this?
That doesn't sound right. I never directed. On a lot of my jobs I would end up helping out fellow actors or things like that, but no, I never sat in the director's booth. Harry Inaba was there from start to finish. We weren't always all in the studio at the same time. I had so many lines, so I was there a lot, but I don't believe there was any other actor cast for Harry Mason other than me. I never heard any story about that.
Maybe she was just a little confused.
What she is describing sounds really dramatic, and I would remember something like that. I certainly never did anything like that. I was pretty careful not to overstep my bounds. There was no hopping in the director's seat. That just wasn't done. Maybe there's some interesting, mysterious backstory I don't know about.
What's next for you, Michael?
I've started writing the great American novel. It's actually a memoir about my youth in Texas.
A story writer, guiding a writer, who are both called Harry. This is incredibly creepy. Considering the implied plot of Silent Hill 1, but maybe it's just a coincidence, only Toyama knows. The Silent Hill play novel mentions Harry being under control by a force he doesn't understand, and that since the day he found Cheryl, all of his actions have been not of his own will. The Silent Hill play novel ending, titled The Truth, ends with Harry writing the events of the game down he has just experienced. He then goes to post the novel, then this is the night he goes to Silent Hill with a 7-year-old Cheryl. Meaning the time loop is a thing here. With one ending where he dies in the other world, specifically having him become something else. Something he describes as filling him with incredible power. So how does Ghost Harry tie in with the players? If you think about it logically, it's very unlikely that players will achieve the good plus as their first ending, because, providing you didn't cheat and use a guide like me, the player has no way of knowing Aglaophatis can be used on Sybil to save her on a first playthrough. It's next to impossible to know about it. First time players will shoot her, and she dies. In fact, on your first time playthrough, you will only achieve the bad or good ending, but probably the bad. The only way Harry knows about Aglaophatis is because the good ending shows that it can dispel the monster inside Alessa. That is the only way players can know it can even be used, or even has this effect. So, the player, and next Harry, with knowledge of the previous game, tries this on Sybil, saving her. Leading to either the bad plus good plus ending, hence the plus bad plus can't even be achieved without knowing the Aglaophatis use. So, that is the ending most players will probably get first time. The ending where Harry dies, the good ending, is the next logical ending. Good ending, Harry and player learn the use of the red liquid. For bad plus you still need to know its effect. Good plus can only be achieved by putting everything together and using it to save Sybil. So you need to know how to manipulate the ending to get the best one. So, Ghost Harry also needs to know how to manipulate things for next Harry to achieve the best ending. Curiosity killed the cat, or in this case, it will save it. The Good Plus ending replaces Harry's wife with Sybil, breaking the time loop. Some fans might not listen to the games, or Toyama, but have no problem with looking to the Lost Memories guide for answers. If you're in doubt that the time loop is broken on the Good Plus ending, consider what they say in Lost Memories. And also on this story preview page. So, to learn the truth of current Harry, the one that eventually leaves with Cheryl onto the third game, and escapes the time loop, we go forwards to Good Plus. To learn more about Ghost Harry, we go backwards. In the bad ending he dies and says goodbye to Cheryl. This is why I framed him as such in the previous video. The game is revealed to be a dying dream. This ultimately is Ghost Harry's fate, no matter which way you look at things. Since two Harrys can't exist in the same time, a lot like two cats, he effectively gets erased. But due to him always being a leftover factor, he remains, somewhere, as a memory given form. Even if you go backwards during your first playthrough to the very first scene in the game, the dead end alley scene, Harry dies. But what about before that? Wouldn't there already be a dead Harry there in the alley? Remember how this is shown only once. On your first playthrough as if it's meant to be important. You can even go back further than this, but dealing with how causal loops start in fiction can be problematic. And a lot of dark ideas can emerge from this. So if Harry leaves on the Good Plus ending for Silent Hill 3, there is still the prior leftover Ghost Harry who helped him. So Ghost Harry, what becomes of him? This phantom shadow, this valve turning, memo writing, angel that endlessly saves Alessa. We will explore this very soon, but we need to move on to some other things first. We know now when the fire started, also the how and why, the time loop. We have Toyama's other works backing up its likelihood. Alongside the Silent Hill play novel. Ghost Harry and Alessa chose to give a chance to a father and daughter to be free, but because the seals were not completed, the dream remains like a cloud over the town of Silent Hill, allowing others with pain to be drawn in. As for time loops, what if I told you? Something very similar happened in Silent Hill 2.